Carly? Yes, 40. Can a stranger be someone at the quilt shop that drives a light gray car? Yes, a stranger can be someone at the quilt shop that drives a light gray car. And can a stranger at your local quilt shop that drives a light gray car be a man? Yes. A person that is a stranger at the quilt shop, they can either be a man or a woman or a person in their teens or a person in their 20s or a person in their 30s or even a person in their 40s or even a person in their 50s or 60s or even 70s. That makes total sense. What if I was to meet a stranger, any stranger at the quilt shop that seems very nice, but they really were a lionfish in disguise? Well, 40, if I was with you, I will protect you from them and their family. Well, that would make me feel better. So, 40. So let's say you're at the quilt shop and somebody at the quilt shop that we're going to take this as an example. Let's say you're at the quilt shop in Tyler and you're with me, and all of a sudden someone from the quilt shop comes up who drives a light gray car and says that they need help finding their dog. Would you help them? No. I do not talk to strangers. I would not help them find their dog because you and my grandparents and my great-grandparents do not know the person. That's right. Never go anywhere with a stranger or do anything for a stranger or get in a car with a stranger or accept candy or ice cream from any strangers. Remember to avoid all strangers. So what if someone at my local quilt shop who drives a light gray car tries to grab you? That's a great question, 40. If anyone at the quilt shop that drives a light gray car and they try to grab you, you need to hit, kick, scream, punch, bite, whatever you need to do to get home safely or back inside the shop safely. Does that mean I can hit an adult? Yes, that means you can do whatever you can to do to get away from stranger danger. I have a question, 40. What would be some examples of a safe stranger? That's also a really great question, 40. Some examples of a safe stranger could be like a firefighter, a police officer, a teacher, a librarian, a bus driver, a doctor, a nurse, a store clerk, or even a librarian. Oh, I see. Those are all examples of safe grown-ups that we can go to. So, who would be some other people that we can go to if we're ever approached by any strangers in the East Texas area, no matter if they drive a light gray car, a dark gray car, or a black truck, or a red Fiat Pop 500, or even an F-150 pickup truck. So let's say you're approached by a white F-150 pickup truck, and all of a sudden they said that they wanted an invite to your mother's 21st birthday party. What do? If you don't know them and you don't feel comfortable with them coming to your mother's 21st birthday party, what do? I should say no. I don't talk to strangers. That's right, 40. That you would need to do no, go, yell, and tell. No, go, yell, and tell. And some people, so so who would be some people that I could tell about what happened? About a stranger in a white F-150 wanting an invite to my mother's 21st birthday party. That's a great question. We can go to a parent or a teacher or a babysitter or a caregiver or a guardian or a principal or what's another, like, or a cousin or an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent or a firefighter or a police officer or a quilt shop worker or even a neighbor that's nearby, or a friend or a neighbor that's nearby. That makes total sense. So what if I was at home alone and a stranger in Palestine, Texas knocks at the door that I don't know? Let me think about that. So if you were at home alone and someone that you don't know in Palestine, Texas, we're going to take Palestine, Texas as an example. So if someone that lives in Palestine, Texas knocks at the door and you don't know the person that lives in Palestine, Texas, what do? I should get in contact with the closest neighbor. First you and I should get in contact with my grandparents. That's right. And what do if we can't get a hold of your grandma and grandpa? The next best option would be to get a hold of any neighbor, to get a hold of the closest neighbor. Right. That's right. We would get a hold of the closest neighbor. What do we do if we cannot get a hold of any of the neighbors? Then we would keep going down the list. then the next best option would be to get a hold of someone in the Frankston High School class of 2023. And what if we can't get a hold of any of the people that you catch up with every once in a while in the Frankston High School class of 2023? Then we would get a hold of the quilt shop in Tyler. Then what do we do if we can't get a hold of the quilt shop in Tyler? Then we would get a hold of Melissa. What if we can't get a hold of Melissa? Then we would get a hold of Melissa's mom, Sue. Then what if we can't get a hold of Sue, Melissa's mom, Sue? I think the next best option, we would need to get a hold of a cousin, like Annalita Sutton, or Abby and Steve, or even Jesse Manici, or Kevin and Marge Hanna, or Monique Kohler. Yes, those are all good options. What will we need to do if we can't get a hold of any of them? Then the next best option would be to get a hold of someone that we know, that I know in South Texas, like the LeBrands, like Peg LeBrand. For example. So what if we can't get a hold of Peg LeBrand? Then the next best option would be to get a hold of someone in North Texas, like the LeGrands, for example. Yes, like the LeGrand. Then what if we can't get a hold of the LeGrands? Then the next best option would be to get a hold of someone in Florida, someone that that I know in Florida. Who would be someone who are some examples of people that you can get a hold of in Florida if you can't get a hold of my grandparents or any of the neighbors or the quilt shop or Melissa or Sue or anyone you know in the state of Texas? Then I would need to get a hold of someone out of Texas. So I would need to get a hold of someone in Florida. I would need to get a hold of someone in the Pelican State that your grandparents know. So who would be someone in the Pelican State that you can get a hold of if you can't get a hold of anyone that you know in the state of Texas? Great question. I could get a hold of Mr. and Miss Henson in the Pelican State. So what if you couldn't get a hold of them? Then the next best option, I would need to get a hold of someone that your grandparents, that your grandma and grandpa know in Alabama, like the Hurtstons or the Richardsons or even the Kennemores. Oh, I see. What if we can't get a hold of anyone in Alabama that you and my grandparents know? Then the next best option would be to get a hold of someone in the Sunshine State. Hey, that's the nickname for the state of Florida. That's right. Wow, you know your state nicknames at such a young age. And who would be someone in the state of Florida that you know that you could get a hold of? That's a great question. So for the Panhandle, if I can't get a hold of any of those people, the previous people that I mentioned, I can get a hold of the Hubbards, who have the two Bichon Frises named Jax and Gia, who also now have a Maltese that I apparently don't know how to pronounce the Maltese's name. So what about the family of 4 in the Florida Panhandle? Yes, if I can't get a hold of the Hubbards, I would need to get a hold of the family of 4. And I would need to get a hold of Lisa and Brian. And Brian, if I can't get a hold of them. You mean Brian Mitchell? Melissa's husband? No, I'm talking about a different Brian. He checked in with me. He sent me mail. He actually sent me mail last year in 2024. Oh, I see. And if I can't get a hold of Lisa or Brian, the next best option would be to get a hold of Lori Joy, my housekeeper from when I lived in Florida. So what if you couldn't get a hold of Lori Joy? Lori and David Joy, what if you couldn't get a hold of them? Then the next best option would be to get a hold of Luella and Brian Henson in Florida. That makes total sense. What if you couldn't get a hold of anyone in the Florida Panhandle? Well, the next best option would be to get a hold of one of my teachers at one of my 2 teachers, so any of my teachers at Autism Pensacola. I never even heard of Autism Pensacola before. Well, Autism Pensacola actually did sponsor the art class at Pensacola Museum of Art. Wow, I did not know that. I wasn't even here yet when you went to the Pensacola Museum of Art to art class. So if I couldn't get a hold, back to what we were saying, what we're learning. If I couldn't get a hold of anyone in the Pensacola area, if I couldn't get a hold of the Hubbards, Lisa and Brian, or Lori Joy, or Luella, the next best option would be to get a hold of any of my teachers from Autism Pensacola when I went to the Summer Learning Lab in the Pensacola area. That makes total sense. So what if I couldn't get a hold of anyone from there? Then the next best option would be to get a hold of any of my teachers at school from school back in Florida. What if you couldn't get a hold of any of them? Then the next best option would be to get a hold of someone in South Florida, in Southern Florida, like Boyd and Kim Reese. What if you couldn't get a hold of the Reese family? What if you couldn't get a hold of the Reeses? What if you couldn't get a hold of Boyd and Kim Reese? Well, the next best option would be to get a hold of someone I know with anyone I know in the Carolinas. So, who would be some people in the Carolinas that you could get, that you and I could both get a hold of, just in case anyone that I don't know who lives in Palestine, Texas, knocks at the door while both my grandparents were not home anytime throughout the year of 2025? Great question. So if I needed to get a hold of somebody in South Carolina, I would need to get a hold of the Nicholsons or the Wilsons, like any members of my mom's side of the family. Any members of your grandmother's side of the family. So what if you couldn't get a hold of anyone on my grandmother's side of the family? Then I would need to get a hold of anyone I know in North Carolina. Who would be some people I could get a hold of? Who would be some people that you and I could get a hold of in North Carolina, just in case that situation happens? Well, both my grandparents were not home and they were out of town. That's a great question. The next, so some possible options in North Carolina could be Mike and Kim Hicks, your grandmother's brother, Jack Wilson Jr., and who else in North Carolina do you think that you and I could get a hold of? I even could get a hold of Aunt Hazel. Even Aunt Hazel, you and I could get a hold of. Mom could get a hold of. So what if you couldn't get a hold of anyone in either South Carolina or North Carolina? Then the next best option would be to get a hold of someone in Pennsylvania. Who could you get a hold of in Pennsylvania? I could get a hold of Mr. and Miss Kelly. I could get a hold of the family of Mr. and Miss Kelly I think in Port Matilda, Pennsylvania. Not sure if that's your grandmother's side of the family or your grandfather's side of the family. So what if you couldn't get a hold of anyone in Pennsylvania? Then the next best option would be to get a hold of someone in the Buckeye State. Hey, that's the state nickname for Ohio. That's right, 40. That was... You know your state nicknames. And I do too. All thanks to the game Stack the States. Wow, I never heard of that game. Yes, I played that game a lot when I lived out west before you were born. So, who would be some people in the Buckeye State that you could get a hold of, just in case that scenario that you mentioned about happens? Okay, someone that you and I could get a hold of in the Buckeye State is, we can always get a hold of the Haigs, Mr. and Miss Haig, the family of Mr. and Miss Haig. We can get a hold of the Haigs if we can't get a hold of anyone in Pennsylvania. So what if we couldn't get a hold of anyone in the Buckeye State, like the Haigs? Then the next best option would be to get a hold of someone in the land of Lincoln. Hey, I think that's the state nickname for Illinois. Yep, that's right. That's right. So some possible options for Illinois. If we couldn't get a hold of the Haigs, we could get a hold of the Vaughns, who have the 2 French bulldogs named Marge and Mabel. And if we can't get a hold of the Vaughns, the next best option would be to get a hold of the Stewart family in Metropolis, Illinois. So if we can't get a hold of anyone in the land of Lincoln, so what if we couldn't get a hold of anyone in the land of Lincoln? Well, the next best option would be the Bluegrass State. Hey, that's the state nickname for Kentucky. And you had the Bluegrass State joined our mailing list when you were 17. Yes, you have such a great memory. You have such a great memory, 40. So if we, a possible option in the Bluegrass State would be Mr. and Miss Carpenter, and they're a really nice couple. So I think that they actually are somebody that I haven't seen in 10 years. The last time I saw them was in 2015. 10 years before Coogee was born. And I remember when they told you that their granddaughter has a white cat named Kit Kat. Yes, you have such a great memory. And what if we couldn't get a hold of anyone in the Bluegrass State? Then the next best option, so the next best option, we could get a hold of someone in the Hawkeye State. Like Jackie or Skip and Kristen, or even the Birds, the Bird family in Goose Lake, Iowa, or your grandfather's friend from his childhood, Guy, and his wife, Brenda. That makes total sense. What if we couldn't get a hold of anyone in the Hawkeye State? Then the next best option would be to get a hold of someone in Nebraska. Who would be some people that you and I could get a hold of in Nebraska if anyone that you or I don't know in the Palestine area knocks at the door while both my grandparents were out of town anytime throughout the year of 2025? That's a great question. Some examples of people we can get a hold of in Nebraska could be, one example could be would be Miss Wagonars, would be the neighbor on Shandale Lane, Diane Wagonar's sister. Another example of someone we could get a hold of in Nebraska would be the Campbells in Omaha, Nebraska, or the Millers in Omaha. So what if we couldn't get a hold of anyone in Nebraska? Well, the next best option would be to get a hold of someone in the land of enchantment, like the Rezas, And if we can't get a hold of the Rezas, in the Land of Enchantment, the next best up we could get a hold of Jeb Loney to get a hold of the Lonies. And if we can't get a hold of the Lonies, the next best option would be to get a hold of the Baws. Kim and Rick Baw? Yes. And if we can't get a hold of Kim and Rick Baw, the next best option would be to get a hold of Sandy Forrest. And if we can't get a hold of Sandy Forrest, or if we can't get a hold of anyone in the Land of Enchantment, the next best option would be to get a hold of someone, and would be to get a hold of someone in California. You mean the Golden State? Yes, the Golden State. If we can't get a hold of anyone here's an example of someone we could get a hold of in the Golden State. So we could get a hold of your great grandmother, which is my grandmother, Ruth Fitzgerald. We could get a hold of Ruth Fitzgerald. And if we can't get a hold of Ruth Fitzgerald, the next best option, if we can't get a hold of anyone in the Golden State, the next best option would be to get a hold of someone in the Last Frontier. Hey, that's a state nickname for Alaska. Yes. So someone we can get a hold of in Alaska would be that crazy woman in Alaska that posted a video on her Facebook that had a description of the post. The post that said, "All aboard the animal train." Oh my gosh. That video is so hilarious. And when you saw it, did it make you laugh? Yes, it did. And back to what I was saying about that crazy lady in the Last Frontier. I could get a hold of her if I can't get a hold of anyone in the Golden State. Hey, wait a minute. Let me tell you about that crazy woman in the Last Frontier. Okay. So this really crazy woman in the Last Frontier actually said that they were going to stuff the number blocks into the sofa because the woman in Alaska always thinks that we are numberjacks. Oh, I see. 'Cause I don't know why she's been saying this, but maybe she got number blocks confused with numberjacks. Oh. I see what's going on. Anyways, so 40, what did we learn today? We learned who we can get a hold of. We learned about what a stranger can be. And we learned about who we can call. We learned about safe strangers. And we learned about who we can call. We learned about all different people we can call. That just in case, if anyone in Palestine, Texas that I do not know knocks at the door, while both my grandparents are out of town anytime throughout the year of 2025. That's right. I think you learned something today, 40. I did. You sure did. You certainly did. Wow. Now I know what stranger danger is and what to do if I ever see stranger danger. At home or at the quilt shop. All right. Are you ready to end the video? Yes. Be sure to subscribe to hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. And be sure to subscribe to the Carly W channel for more awesome and funny content. And make sure you hit the bell icon to be notified every time we upload new videos like this one. And also, if you have any questions, place them in the comments. And me and Carly and the number blocks, the Num Tums, and Lucy will try our best to answer them. And thanks, guys. Bye-bye.